You know the Viking story, dragon ships, raids, gold. But nobody talks about what happened when families couldn't pay, when mothers sat in camps watching the deadline pass, when negotiations broke down and the payment never came. This isn't about warriors or exploration. This is about the captives who became currency and the brutal mathematics of ransom gone wrong. 821 on the Irish coast, 844 in Seville, 1011 in Canterbury, different places, same question. What do you do with a human being nobody will buy back? They're testing how much a person is worth in coins, in cloth, in livestock, and anything that can be loaded onto a ship. The Annals of Ulster record it plainly. 821 at Howth near Dublin. They carried off a great booty of women. Not just carried off, held, waiting. Counting days until someone decides to pay. The system runs on one thing, fear that if you don't pay, something worse happens. Negotiations happen or they don't happen. The sources just say he was killed at the raiders' encampment. That's the line. Killed at the encampment. Ransom negotiations broke down according to scholars who studied the account published in a 2022 analysis in the Scandinavian Journal of History. The body doesn't go home. The family doesn't get closure. The Vikings move on. Elfia, Archbishop of Canterbury, is captured during a raid. He's not just some villager, he's the Archbishop. The sources say Vikings held him through the winter. 7 months. Spring arrives and the payment still hasn't come. September 19th, 1012. The Archbishop refuses to let anyone pay for his release. He's killed at Greenwich. Drunken Vikings stone him to death after he refuses to allow the ransom. One axe blow finishes it. They threw the body into the Thames, according to accounts analyzed in research from Uppsala University, published in April 2019. If you value documented history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the peer-reviewed Scandinavian Journal of History, published June 2022, and the academic journal Slavery and Abolition from Uppsala University's Department of Archaeology, published April 2019. These aren't popular history sites. These are archaeological analyses of primary medieval sources, burial evidence, and contemporary chronicles from monastery records across Ireland, England, and continental Europe. Now, back to the information. 10% of Viking-age Scandinavia's population were thralls, slaves. That's the estimate from research conducted by archaeologist Ben Raffield at Uppsala University and published by the History Channel in January 2025, based on contemporary source analysis. 10% means hundreds of thousands of people over 3 centuries. Most came from the British Isles and Eastern Europe. Women, children, men, entire families sometimes. The annals record it over and over. 821 at Etar, great numbers of women. 844 at Seville in Spain, women and children specifically targeted according to Arabic sources from the period. The Annals of Fulda record a Viking leader threatening the local population. Pay tribute or we take your women and children, not your men, your women and children, because women and children have specific value in markets. Women can weave, cook, bear children, become concubines. Children adapt, grow into labor, cost less to feed while they're small. Arabic geographer Ibn Hawqal writes in 977 about a Viking slave trade stretching from Spain to Egypt across the Mediterranean. At every point, women fetch premium prices. Hedeby in Denmark, Burka in Sweden. Archaeological excavations recovered iron shackles and collars from all 3 sites near the harbors, according to research published in Slavery and Abolition in April 2019. 4 shackles at Burka, 6 at Hedeby, at least 1 in Dublin. More at Trelleborg, at Winchester, at Crannig sites across Ireland. These aren't animal restraints, they're human-sized. They're found in urban centers near water, near loading zones, where people get moved. Spanish chronicles from the period record it. She's got 2 children, maybe 3. They're all bound, walk to ships, loaded into hulls with 40, 50, 100 others. The ship rows north, weeks pass. They land at Dublin. She's separated from her children. Children go to one buyer, she goes to another. Or maybe they all stay together in someone's property, held in pens behind houses while merchants decide what they're worth. Ibn Fadlan, the Arab diplomat, sees it in 922 on the Volga River among the Rus. Captives living in houses with their captors, being sold directly from those houses. Some get bought, some get ransomed. Some sit there while families back home scramble to gather payment. That's what it cost Amarello Mistalis in 1015 to ransom his 3 daughters from Normans who raided up the Douro River in Portugal. The account survives in an Iberian document analyzed by historian Helio Pires from the New University of Lisbon and published in the journal Viking and Medieval Scandinavia. Amarello writes he was left poor. He didn't have the silver. A woman named Froila Trictasindes loaned him 15 silver solitos. The daughters were named Cirili, Ermesienda, Fakilo. 3 names, 15 coins. 2 years later, Amarello finally paid Froila back after selling his goods. But he got his daughters back. Octicio pays with a blanket of wolfskin, a sword, 1 shirt, 3 scarves, a cow, and 3 modios of ground salt. That's the exact inventory recorded in the historical document analyzed by Pires. No silver, just goods. Whatever he could scrape together. He got them back because he paid something. The system allows negotiation. Vikings want profit. If you can pay something, they'll often take it. But there's a floor, a point below which the transaction doesn't happen. Because keeping captives costs resources, food, water, space on ships, guards. If you can't pay enough to make it worth their time, the captive becomes a different kind of asset. Evidence from Stockholm University researcher Anna Kjellström, examining skeletal remains published in July 2016 in Science Nordic, shows what happened to some who couldn't be ransomed. Graves in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, containing presumed thralls, the bodies show signs of abuse. Healed fractures, trauma, and decapitation. Heads removed before burial. Some graves, the skulls are missing entirely. These people died violently according to bone analysis. They weren't old, they weren't sick, they were killed. The Moose Man grave. Wealthy warrior buried with weapons, shield, moose antlers. Beside him a thrall. No possessions. Decapitated. Head separated from body. Grimsta grave near Stockholm. 2 decapitated men. No goods. Probable slaves. Probable sacrifice. Isle of Man in the Irish Sea. Wealthy Viking tomb. Inside, a young female, killed by a ferocious blow to the top of her head, mixed in with cremated animals. Or because negotiations failed and the captive became worthless alive, but useful dead. 1/3 for funeral clothes, 1/3 for making nabid, a Scandinavian beer they'll drink during the ceremony. Then they ask the dead man's slave girls, which of you will die with him? 1 volunteers. From that moment, she's guarded. 2 women wash her feet. She drinks and sings every day. Preparation. She goes to different groups of men, has coital relations with each. Each man gives her a message of loyalty to pass to the chieftain in the afterlife. She's given drinks until she's intoxicated. Ibn Fadlan writes, he could see she was distracted, didn't know what she was doing. 6 men enter the tent with her, have intercourse with her, lay her beside her dead master. 2 men hold her hands, 2 hold her feet. An old woman they call the Angel of Death loops a rope around her neck. 2 men pull the rope. The old woman stabs her between the ribs with a knife. The men outside bang shields with sticks, so her screams can't be heard, so other slave girls won't be discouraged from volunteering. The event happened. The details match archaeological finds of ship burials with multiple bodies, animal sacrifices, decapitation marks on subordinate burials. This is documented practice. This is what happened to enslaved women when their masters died and they had no ransom, no family, no value, except as funeral offerings. Ibn Fadlan describes 2 attractive girls being sexually abused by their owners on the Volga while others watched. The girls were for sale, their bodies were available. Danish National Museum records from historical sources note that slaves' bodies were available for sexual exploitation as standard practice. No consent, no refusal. Your property. If you're young, if you're attractive, you become a concubine or you get sold to someone who wants a concubine. Medieval law codes analyzed in a 2017 study published in Viking and medieval Scandinavia indicate concubines might have had the same status as slaves. Some sources suggest different forms of concubinage existed. Some concubines gained power through political networks, but most had no power. Most were enslaved women trapped in households serving sexual and domestic functions. Modern genetic mapping of Iceland's population, published in 2016, shows 2/3 of Iceland's founding female population had Gaelic origins from Ireland or Scotland. Only 1/3 had Nordic roots. The reverse is true for males, 2/3 Nordic, 1/3 Gaelic. Translation. Nordic men went to Ireland and Scotland, took women in raids, or bought them in Dublin slave markets, brought them to Iceland. Those women bore children, built the population, but they didn't go willingly. The evidence points to mass abduction, forced migration, sexual exploitation on a scale that shaped an entire nation's genetic makeup. The Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe were targeted so heavily in Viking raids that their ethnic name became synonymous with enslavement. Arabic sources note the word Sakalbi, meaning eunuch, entered Arabic from Sakalabi, meaning Slav. Because Slavic captives, especially boys and men, were often castrated before being sold to Islamic markets. Arab writers claimed castration improved their intellect, grotesque justification for mutilation. Birka to Byzantium, Volga, Bulgaria to the Samanid slave markets in Central Asia, captives moved like cargo, months-long journeys, changing hands, each transaction extracting value until the person is sold or dies or escapes. 940 at Dalkey Island near Dublin. An Irish bishop held captive tries to escape. He dies in the attempt. The Icelandic Book of Settlements tells a story of Irish slaves revolting in early Iceland. All the escapees were killed. Revolts happen, but they are crushed. Security is tight because losing captives means losing profit. Women and children at Walcheren in Frisia, 837. 280 clerics captured at Kildare, Ireland, 886, including women according to monastery records, analyzed in the Scandinavian Journal of History. Each line in the annals represents dozens or hundreds of people. Each capture means families torn apart, children separated from mothers, mothers sold to different buyers than their children. Some get ransomed if families can gather resources, most don't. Thralls living in longhouses at the dark end with the animals. Beaten if they don't obey. Used for labor, for sex, for whatever the owner needs. Life expectancy unknown, but bone analysis shows poor diet compared to free people. Fish-heavy diet while masters ate meat and dairy. Parasite loads from latrine excavations show intestinal worms common in lower status populations. Physical evidence of malnourishment, overwork, abuse. If a freeborn man impregnates a slave and doesn't acknowledge the child is thrall. Generational slavery. Some thralls were born into it, never knew freedom, never had anyone to ransom them because they had no family wealth, no connections, nothing. 750 to 1050 approximately. The peak is probably 9th and 10th centuries when large-scale raids bring back hundreds at a time. Dublin develops specifically as a slave trading hub according to archaeological analysis. The growth pattern of the settlement in the 840s matches the expansion of slaving networks. Dublin becomes wealthy from this. The city's development is funded by selling people. Church pressure against slavery increases. Economic changes reduce demand. Population growth in Europe means more poor freemen willing to work for almost nothing. Slavery becomes less necessary. The Dublin slave market declines. England passes laws restricting slave trading in 1002. Ireland's slave trade ends around 1100. Arabic coins and Scandinavian hoards bought with human sales. The archaeological record preserves fragments, enough to know it happened. Not enough to know every name, every face, every mother who watched the deadline pass and realized nobody was coming. Recent archaeological work continues to uncover more. 2019 excavations at possible Viking campsites. Analysis of human remains using isotope testing to determine origin. Strontium levels in teeth and bones show some thralls grew up locally, not captured in distant raids. Born into slavery, others show foreign origins, captured and transported. The graves at Grimsta, at Burka, at Isle of Man, at sites across Scandinavia all tell pieces of the story. Men banging shields with sticks to drown out the slave girl's screams, to cover the sound of her being strangled and stabbed. The reason given, so other slave girls won't be discouraged from volunteering. The implication is clear. They know the girls can hear. They know this is horrifying. They know it would stop others from agreeing to die, so they make noise. They drown it out. They maintain the fiction of voluntary sacrifice while committing murder, witnessed by an Arab diplomat who wrote it down for history. She had no family to ransom her. She had no future except more slavery. When they asked who wants to die with the master, what were her options? Die now with ceremony and feasting, or live as property until she's worked to death, or killed anyway, or dies from disease or childbirth as an enslaved concubine? The sources say she volunteered. The sources also say she was distracted, didn't know what she was doing, had to be drugged with alcohol and dragged into the tent. That's not voluntary. That's coercion with theatrical elements. 15 silver solidos for 3 daughters in 1015 Portugal. A wolfskin blanket, sword, shirt, 3 scarves, cow, and salt for a wife and daughter in 1026. For wealthy captives, much more. Archbishop Elphia's ransom would have been enormous, but he refused. For common people with no status, the price drops. At some point, it's not worth negotiating. The captive either works or dies. Merchants hold back supply. Or they move captives east to Hedeby, to Burka, to the Volga, where demand might be higher. It's economics, it's supply chains, it's profit margins calculated in human lives. The Rus on the Volga operated with particular efficiency, according to Ibn Fadlan's account and other Arabic sources. They established trading posts with markets. Novgorod had streets named High Street and Slave Street where transactions happened openly. Archaeological evidence of shackles and restraints confirms this. Women, especially young attractive women, fetched premium prices in markets extending to Khazaria and Volga, Bulgaria. The Rus treated captives carefully, not from compassion, but because they were valuable cargo. Damaged goods sell for less. The cycle perpetuated itself. More raids, more captives, more exploitation, more wealth for those at the top, more desperation for those at the bottom. The Italian greeting ciao comes from schiavo, meaning I am your slave, a relic of Venice's role in human trafficking to Muslim buyers. These aren't metaphors. These are words soaked in actual enslavement, actual transactions, actual bodies moving through markets. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle rarely mentions specific captives, but one entry stands out. 1011 Canterbury raid. Both consecrated men and women were taken. Both. That specification matters. Women in religious orders were supposed to be protected. They weren't. Vikings took nuns the same as anyone else. Value is value. He's freed, but he's captured again later and taken to Orkney Islands. Eventually he escapes and makes it to the continent. His sister's fate isn't recorded. That absence is telling. The male noble's story continues. The female captive vanishes from history. That pattern repeats in source after source. Men get named. Women become numbers. Great booty of women. Large numbers of women. Women and children. Collective nouns. Quantified but not identified. Their individual stories lost, except in cases like Amarello's daughters, where someone wrote down names because someone paid a ransom and documented the transaction. Capturing high-status individuals meant big ransoms, but also big risks if negotiations failed. Better to take large numbers of common people, especially women and children. Easier to capture, easier to transport, easier to sell, less risk if some die in transit. Profit margins worked out better. That's why the sources consistently show women and children as primary targets. Not because Vikings couldn't capture men, because women and children were better investments. Also let us know in the comments where you're hearing this from. We're using sources from the peer-reviewed Tanfonline Scandinavian Journal of History, published 2022, with articles by Ben Raffield, analyzing Viking encampments and captive-taking practices, plus archaeological site reports from Uppsala University's Department of Archaeology, published in multiple journals, including Slavery and Abolition, April 2019, on Slave Market Archaeology. These aren't Wikipedia summaries. These are original research publications with site excavation data, isotope analysis results, and comparative studies of medieval primary sources. Now, continuing. This is generational trauma on a mass scale. The sources don't discuss it. Vikings didn't write memoirs about enslaving pregnant women, but the logic is inescapable. Raids targeted women of childbearing age. Some women were pregnant, some got pregnant in captivity through rape. Those children exist in the historical record as genetic evidence, but not as named individuals. You're his property. His property gets disposed of with him. Ibn Fadlan witnessed one funeral. How many others happened that he didn't see? How many thralls were killed at funerals across 3 centuries? The archaeological evidence shows it happened repeatedly. Multiple graves with sacrificed subordinates, multiple decapitated bodies, multiple cremations with human remains mixed with animal remains. Sometimes they were left for animals, according to Ibn Fadlan. Sometimes they were dumped in unmarked graves. Sometimes they were burned and their ashes scattered. The invisibility was intentional. They were meant to be forgotten. Their lives were meant to not matter. 10% of Scandinavian population across 3 centuries. Thousands taken in large raids. 846 at Paris. 858 at Oysel. 869 at Aleth. Each major raid recorded in annals, each representing hundreds of captives. Not all got ransomed. Probability suggests most didn't. Most entered slavery. Most died enslaved. Some were mothers, some had children. None of their names survive except in rare cases. Viking culture celebrated warriors. Sagas glorify raids. Poetry commemorates battles. The enslaved don't appear in sagas except as background. They're the invisible labor force making everything else possible. Who built the longhouses? Thralls. Who wove the sails? Thralls. Who worked the fields? Thralls. Who cooked the food? Thralls. The entire system runs on enslaved labor, but the culture doesn't acknowledge it because acknowledging it means confronting the horror. Graves with subordinate burials. Isotope signatures showing foreign origins. Bone chemistry revealing poor diet. The physical record doesn't lie. The written sources are fragmentary and biased, but the bones, the metal, the earth itself preserves truth. The mothers who couldn't pay ransom left no letters. They wrote no accounts. They appear in historical records as line items. 821, women carried off. 837, women and children. 844, women targeted specifically. Behind each line are individuals. A woman from a village near Dublin, a mother of 2 from Seville, a teenager from a farm near the Seine. They had names, they had families, they had lives before Vikings came. Might have gathered what little wealth they had, might have negotiated desperately. But if the price was too high, if the family was too poor, if no one cared enough, the woman stayed captive. She entered the system. She became a thrall. She worked until she couldn't. She bore children if she was forced to. She watched her children grow up enslaved. She died without ever seeing home again. Gradual destruction of everything they were. The sources don't describe this in detail because the sources are written by monks recording raids, or by Arab travelers observing from outside, or by saga writers centuries later romanticizing the past. None of them cared about enslaved women's daily experiences. We know they were sexually available to owners. We know their diet was poor. We know their life expectancy was lower. We know they had no legal rights, no property, no autonomy. We know they could be sold, traded, killed with minimal consequences to the owner. A mother in that position has no power to protect her children. If her children are sold to different owners, she can't follow. If her children are abused, she can't intervene. If her children die, she might not even be told. The sources mention this sometimes. Thralls' children being taken, sold separately, used as leverage. The system is designed to break bonds, eliminate resistance, maximize profit. They could retain small portions of proceeds from market sales if owners allowed. They could theoretically accumulate enough to purchase freedom. But how long would that take? Years? Decades? And that's only if the owner allowed it, if the thrall wasn't worked to death first, if they weren't killed in a sacrifice, if they survived disease, childbirth accidents. The probability was low. Their grandchildren, if any, might eventually gain freedom. The law codes say freed thralls had lower compensation rights. Their descendants needed multiple generations to achieve full free status. Even freedom came with asterisks. Recent excavations at Woodstown near Waterford, Ireland have uncovered what might be a temporary slaveholding site. Not enough evidence yet to confirm, but the location makes sense. Near water, strategic position. If confirmed, it would be another node in the network. Another place where captives waited while their fate was decided. More excavations planned, more analysis coming. Still reading contemporary sources that describe the horror in flat bureaucratic language. Great booty of women was carried away. That sentence contains hundreds of destroyed lives, mothers, daughters, sisters, some ransomed, most not. In workshops in Iceland, in fields in Sweden, in merchant houses in Hedeby, in harems in Baghdad, in farmsteads across the Rus territories, scattered across the Viking world, working until they died, never seeing home, never free, their names lost, their stories erased, their children enslaved. The only thing that survives is the system that destroyed them. The shackles, the graves, the isotope signatures in bone, the genetic markers in modern populations showing forced migration and mass rape, the linguistic traces in words we still use, the empty spaces in historical records where their voices should be. Knowing this is permanent, living with that knowledge until they die. Their descendants carry genetic markers of that violence. Their absence echoes in the historical record. But it existed on a foundation of enslaved labor. It was funded by selling human beings. The beautiful artifacts came from workshops staffed by thralls. The great halls were built by thralls. The expansion to Iceland was made possible by thralls. The wealth came from trading thralls. You can't separate the two. You can't celebrate Viking achievement without acknowledging Viking atrocity. The mothers who couldn't pay ransom are part of the same story as the dragon ships and the exploration and the sagas. They're the invisible labor, the hidden cost, the profane reality underneath the romantic legend. The story is still being written from archaeological data and historical sources. The mothers who couldn't pay left no written testimony, but they left traces in earth and bone and metal. Those traces speak if we listen. Documented, sourced, verified through multiple lines of evidence. Not speculation, not exaggeration. Just the brutal historical fact of what happened when Vikings took captives and families couldn't pay the ransom. The mothers became thralls. The children became thralls. The system consumed them. That's what Vikings did to mothers who couldn't pay. They erased them.